Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. You are listening to Africa. Thank you for joining us for another beautiful sunny day here in Seattle, Washington. Actually, we are live on YouTube for an episode of the African Father in America podcast. My name is Simon Okelo, and I'm excited to be here with Dakohai Matityahu, who is a brother that I connected with through Clubhouse. I host a room on Clubhouse known as the Daily African Proverbs, where we dissect African proverbs every single day. Every day we gather on Clubhouse and we dissect these proverbs and ensure that we protect African culture and we make our ancestors smile. And we have to do that consistently. And so Dakohai has been a contributor, and just based on everything I've heard him share with us, I was like, wow. I started this podcast in order to hear stories about young black fathers who are doing great things in order to keep their families together. I need to interview Dakohai, but by extension, I need to interview young black fathers here on Clubhouse and live stream it on YouTube and do it during working hours so that those who are in the office at 11 a.m. in the morning on Monday can really have an understanding that it's not easy to be a black father in the world today, but we have people that are actually changing the narrative of black fathers that you know. Many people know black fathers as lazy people, violent people, irresponsible, absent. Those are some of the words you hear. But, I strive to be a wonderful young black father of my 3 girls here in Seattle where I live. And this was informed by how my mother brought me up. I learned so much about fatherhood from my mother than my father. And, I'm really excited to be here, to respond to some questions. Have you ever wondered how African fathers learn, how we grow, and how we thrive despite all the challenges that we face every day, and I answer that through my own stories, through how I live my life and through the things I do. And then, how do we then learn how to be responsible so that we change this narrative about what people say about us, so that we live our life the way that we feel that is best for us and our community without waiting for other people's approval, and I feel that through stories we can learn. And today my brother Dakohai, who was born in Boston, where he's a local artist, he's a life coach, he's an entrepreneur, he's a spiritualist, and he has a goal to help connect humanity with the laws of nature. I would love for you, Brother Dakohai, to just briefly introduce yourself, but start with, a story about you being a little boy in your favorite place in the world, whether it's in Boston, and what you are doing as a little boy that informs the father that you are today.
Hey guys, my name is Dakohai Matityahu, and yeah, like Simon says, I'm just a young father in America trying to better what I had. Right, we can only better what we were given, and a memory of me as a child in my favorite place. My favorite place was in the lap of the oldest woman in the room. Yeah. So I was raised by women, tribes and tribes and tribes of women. I always found myself at the foot of the eldest woman in the room. She always took me in. That was always my favorite spot. I always got candy. I always got a lesson. I was always welcome in there. Out of all the places I've been in my life, that was the most welcoming. And how that has changed me as a father now is being that welcoming, right? I'm very welcoming to my son. I feel like a lot of people will probably say their dads are a little hard or rough around the edges, and I'm like, I welcome in my son with all that he's about to bring. I may not like what he's done, I may not enjoy anything at all, but it doesn't mean I can't still welcome him. And one of my favorite thing that has, again, memory as a child was always being welcomed at the foot of the eldest woman in the room.
I love that a lot. I love that a lot. That feels like, that feels like my own story in so many ways.
Yeah, because earlier
Yeah.
you were like, it's funny
Yeah.
that you were a father, but your mother taught you how to be a father. And I was gonna say, yeah, I learned a lot about caring and children all from the women
Yeah.
around me. To be
Yeah.
honest, I don't really have male role models. Like, there's not much I can say. They're like, oh, there's this male role model that I look up to a lot. But I can tell you a lot of women role models, a lot of women that have poured into me, that
Yeah.
have allowed me to, I guess those women never counted me out. And that is what I'm doing with my son. I'm never counting him out.
Right.
I'm always including him. He comes to work with us. He's sleeping right now, or he'll be in the meeting with me. You know, he's in the clubhouse with me. My son is included in everything that I do.
Right. I love it. I love it. And that reminds me exactly of how my mom actually helped raise me as a man, because she never sat me down and said, this is how I want you to be as a man, this is how I want you to raise your children, this is how I want you to have integrity with the things you do in your community, this is how I want you to advocate for the downtrodden. She never did any of that. She used to show me by what she did, and she used to bring me by her side and give me work that, look, this is what we are doing, this is your part. Yeah.
Yo, that's all you need.
Yeah. So you're saying your favorite place as a little boy was always on the lap of one of the eldest women in the room. I love that. Share with us a story of one of the lessons you've learned from an elderly woman who has inspired you, one of those women that you sat on their laps. I do have a story. I'll share it in a moment too.
Let's see. A story. Okay.
I love stories.
I'm more peaceful now. But when I felt something, it came out of my mouth very quickly as a child. That was something that I never refrained from. It was like I felt it. It needed to be said. Everybody needs to hear it. And I remember an elder woman holding me down because I was telling the truth and no one wanted to believe me. He was like, no, I know him. Nope, he's always, if he said it, then it's the truth. If he said it, then I don't have to, there's no need for us to deny it because I know this child.
Yeah.
This story ended up like 10 years later, something happened with a kid in my house and he was getting in trouble by the adults. And then I literally remembered that what she did for me, I did for him. Right? I immediately was like, nah, this child was with me. If he said he was with me the whole time. So it was just like a lesson of standing up for what we know.
Right.
Even if the congregation was all against me, she was like, nah, sorry.
Yeah. Wow. Man, one of the challenges I've faced as a father is pursuing my dreams, When I moved to the US in 2010, I had to do so many things in order to pay the bills, I worked as an interpreter. I was interpreting for doctors and counselors, and there's a day I actually interpreted for actually twice women who are giving birth. And at that time, things are so intense that they forget even English, So I have to be there in Kiswahili to help, interpret. I worked at Casco. I pushed carts at Casco, I've worked for a logistics company And in that company I worked in different things, from working in the warehouse to learning air export and import, and moving anything around the world, um, and I've also worked as a social media manager for a university, but in alongside all of that, I've always been pursuing my own dreams, my own music, my own work with my non-profit organization, my own business initiatives, because my desire is always to be the way I used to be when I was young. My mom had a business that I was a part of. She was never employed. She always employed many people. She worked for the government for a while, but she ended up being stopped for like 15 years and then being reinstated. So many complicated things happen to people who are employed in Africa and even here. Anyhow, so I got to a place recently where I felt that the work I was doing, I was not doing justice to it because of being employed. So I decided to focus 100% on my own creative endeavors. That's why I'm able to do this podcast episode during working hours, because I'm making podcasting my full-time work. I'm making the Daily African Proverbs my full-time work. I'm making my work with my non-profit organization, One Vibe Africa, my full-time work, and I'm doing other things. I'm working on my music, I'm producing Madaraka Festival. We just did Africa Day, So figuring out how, while I do that, I also train my kids how to do that. Because to do all these things, you have to be very well connected. You have to build a lot of relationships. You have to work with artists and sponsors and community partners. And these are the same skills you need to run an organization as a CEO. These are the same skills you need to survive, at any given point in life. So I'm just trying to give them these basic skills, But in the middle of this, you have to take care of your mental health, You have to take care of your physical health, And I wanted you to just take us on a journey on what are some of the skills that you've learned, how are you passing them on to your kids, and also how are you taking care of your mental health?
Where? Okay. My journey. Okay, the skills that I've acquired. It's like that movie Taken. I've acquired a certain set of skills that allows me to be very functioning in anywhere you drop me.
Right.
So, so I cooked for 15 years. So I could cook. I cook fine dining. I cook any kind of cuisine. That's kind of like, that's the one thing I can say that I'm formally trained in, that I've spent a lot of time under a lot of people to be really good at. And then instinctually, I am a singer, a dancer, a teacher. All these things I became by the time I was like 12 or 13. They all were given to me. It was like the spot was open, and I presented myself as so, and then all of a sudden, apparently this gift was inside of me. So I often tell people that I'm a jack of a lot of trades because I want to be the one to teach my son the first step. I know I'm not a master, right? Of course, right? But if anything that my child wants, there is no way I don't know how to do it, or I don't have someone directly connected to me that doesn't know how to do it. So that goes down to, so right now we are in the process of doing food and sign language and Haitian Creole and English. Right? That's a lot for a child that's about to be 2. So I've started taking the sign language and then adding Haitian words to it. So now, versus me trying to confuse him, and because the Haitian word sounds very different from the American word, but the symbol is the same. Right? I learned that as a teacher. Right? There's many different ways that we can teach things that doesn't just require us to drill the one thing that we know. So a lot of all that I do is literally my whole life. Like earlier, you were listing all the things that you've done, and I'm like, oh, now I see who he is. Right? you had to do all that so that you can be full-time now. Just think about all the skills and little tiny things that you were able to figure out and learn, even know about, like import and export internationally. Come on. We're talking about real things that can change and shift that you know a little bit about. So you've been able to take all these things and help them make you a CEO of your craft. And that's pretty much
Exactly.
the same thing that I've done. So like I've been an art therapist without a degree. I've been an art teacher, a cook, a dog trainer. I'm a photographer. I run an entertainment media company. I, I have two nonprofits. One is Keepers of the Meadow that focuses on reconnecting humans with the laws of nature. So I focus on garden consulting. So we sit and we talk about what you want to do. I explain how it helps the environment around you. And we work on a price on however it works. And I do the whole thing. Like I'll get it all done for you. I'll walk in, I'll walk out like I was never there. And it's just for you and your children to enjoy. Me, my wife, and our community do that. So that's another thing. I do sustainable gardening. And all of this plays into the homeschooling. You know what I mean? It plays into, these are all the things I had to go seek and learn because I wanted to make sure I taught my son first. You know, I wanted to make sure that he learned it from me first, and then he could get into the world. Because I've had mentors introduce me to things the wrong way. They introduced me to certain things where it was for their benefit outside of me, like kind of like using whatever talent I had for their own benefit. And I would
Right.
never want my son to fall victim to that. So it's
Right.
like, first thing is I'm going to learn how to be anything that I need to be. So that way my son can be anything that he needs to be.
Right.
And what was the second question?
Um, the second question was about mental health, because I know that you do capoeira, and you know when we talked recently during one of our recent conversations, you also spoke about the concept of moving as a unit. You know, so I wanted you to
Yeah,
speak mental health, and then you can add that into it.
All right. Mental health for me is huge, huge. I struggle heavily with that. I am a surviving suicide attempter. I don't know what people call that, but that's how I teach a lot. It comes from the fact that I have been at the lower depths before multiple times between the age of 14 to 18. Um, and the one thing that I was able to learn that got me with mental health at first was art, right? So I cooked for 15 years. I was trapped in the kitchen. I never saw a holiday from the age of 14. No, even more. I never saw a holiday ever. I worked every holiday, every birthday until I met my wife at 26. Right. And then when she met me, she was like, we have all this stuff. And I'm just like, nah, I work. All I do is cook, 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 cook. Right. So then when I had a heart thing on my body, because my heart was skipping while I was in the kitchen, I passed out twice. And then I had to make a choice. I was like, I asked my girlfriend at the time, I was like, what should I do? And she told me to quit without any kind of, I had no backup plan. This is a man who's worked his whole life. I've never had a day off. So for you to tell me not to work is scary. Right? So, but I took that leap of faith, and the next day I get introduced to an opportunity of becoming a sponsored intern in an art therapist nonprofit. Literally the next day. So I walk in and we're talking about all the things that I do, because like by then I did a little bit of poetry, dance, and then I sang. And I explained how my poetry is what saved me a lot through my mental health. My ability to express how I felt in a creative pattern allowed me to let it go, because people didn't really understand me. I didn't understand me. So when I was able to write it and then perform it, it was like, I tell people, like, I perform poetic suicide when I get on stage, so I don't do it in real life. So it was like, I get on stage and I pour out my heart with all the poems at those times, because if I let it out there, it doesn't come home with me. Um, and then learning about art as a healing tool, a holistic tool, learning how art builds community allowed me to take art to a whole nother level. So now at that same time, I get introduced to Capoeira Angola, and I'm doing martial arts. I realize that I'm a dancer, but I've never really used my body. Right? I danced my whole life, but I'm trying to do this martial art that is a dance, and it was foreign for a long time. I was like, what's going on here? And capoeira allowed me to realize that I was only using one part of my brain. As soon as I expanded into the collective, so we were moving as a collective, learning as a collective, my energy was different. I realized that my anger shortened, right? I was able to breathe. Like the movements were literally healing me. Right? We talk about capoeira when you go upside down and your head is on the ground. That is you transferring to the spiritual world. That is you dropping whatever that is there, right? And then you have the songs, and then you have the instruments. I had every level of art in capoeira Angola coming out of learning about art as a therapy tool. So it was like literally like a dent, dent, dent. So now I'm in capoeira for 6 years, and then I end up leaving, and now I've learned so much about how moving the body and breathing allows chemicals to go through your brain and process out. So I'm a real big believer that you can do it. My mental state is it's how do I put this? Like in order for me to stay normal and functioning, my brain has to always be like, I will do this. It will get done. My brain cannot like not do that. So like I'm always pushing, like no matter what it is. It's like whatever I'm doing, I'm pushing. And then when I need a break, I take a real break. Right? I throw on video games for 8 hours. People think when especially with again black men, a lot of black men play video games. A lot of them do, and people don't know that video games help remove a lot of trauma off the mind. We have never made the correlation yet. Right? But there is science behind this, that the video games actually help with the processing of what's happening in the brain. I'm an example of someone that when I do too much therapy for people, I need video games to allow whatever happened doesn't go into my life or into my family. It allows me to let it out into the video game. Right? Another thing that we talk about, again, of black fathers in America is anime. I'm like, anime is such a giant thing, and I don't think people understand it. It's because the main plot of anime is what? The main character is foreign, doesn't fit in, doesn't know what to do with whatever's inside of them. Everybody fears them. The stories about the main character finding out that the power within him is not bad. And as the character develops, the strength that needed to save the day was always within the character. Black men are always looking for that. Where else do we have that at? We don't have that anywhere else where we're allowed to see us in that framework. And anime, especially Naruto, is that story of being neglected, being casted out, being counted out every time. Until when it mattered, you sacrificed your life for the village. You're showing the village that you actually care and you actually love them. And you had to prove to them first before they could accept you. So like video games, anime, and art are the ways that I've been able to kind of like keep sane. Because I may not be able to find myself out in this world like in America, but I can find glimpses of me in these things. And they allow me to kind of process through whatever I'm going through and kind of going out of it. What's crazy is right now I'm moving. I don't have any of my stuff put up. I've been going through a lot of crazy things, and I realize I'm like, oh snap, my routine has been interrupted. I'm like, for the first time in my life, things are like, I feel myself like struggling, and I'm like, where'd this come from? And I'm like, because I always had these set things to make sure that this didn't happen to me. So now that I'm moving and stuff in storage and trying to get all my feng shui back in, I realized that my home was a tool that I created to make sure I can spiritually replenish. That way I could kind of go through, right? But a lot of black men don't have a place to call home, especially out here. So it's just like, as we talk about black men, I'm happy we came up with this topic because I had a home birth. We're hella young. We had a home birth. We're about to have another one in October.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. No
Mm-hmm.
one fucked with us. Nobody. We live in Boston, number one medical place in the whole nation. Everybody looked at us like we were crazy. So on top of that, I got to really, because of that, I cling to my wife. I got to notice something in the culture here about pregnant women. When the process of having a baby enters in, like, I understand that the pregnant woman needs concern. We got to make sure she's safe, she's carrying, right? That's all necessary. But who is the one that's doing that? And are we checking in on the person that has to maintain that part? Right? I realize that, like, one, again, I love my wife. I'm forever with her. I don't need nobody. But in the process, I realized the neglect of the father all the way down to the birth of the child is a real thing, right? My midwife was the only person that asked me how I was doing. And I had to search to find this kind of woman.
Yeah.
Right? Every time I saw her, she was like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, shit. You see me? I'm like, I'm good. We're good. Don't worry about me. Go back to mama. You know, she got the baby. You didn't want to ask about me. But I was so surprised that she asked about how I was doing. And again, like, no one checks in on us.
Yeah.
So we have these outlets like anime, like martial arts, like video games. You'll find a lot of this is common with Black men. Because what other outlet do we have to where people are really checking in on us?
Right. Man, I love our conversation. Just want to take a moment to recognize everyone who has joined us on YouTube. Do you know Jacinth Cook?
Oh yeah, that's one of
yeah, she's saying that you're doing so great.
That's my mentor / also someone I do spiritual life coaching for.
Yeah,
that's family. That's
nice.
the Auntie J right
there. Nice. Then on Clubhouse we have my brother Happily, we have Nadia, we have Rejoice, we have Kimberly, Segen, and Feleni, and also Wei. Thank you all for joining us. We are having a conversation here where we are learning lessons from African fathers. Today, my guest is Dakohai Matityahu, and I am also a father, and I'm always seeking lessons from other fathers so that I can become better. And there are a number of other younger fathers than even myself that now look up to me. There are other younger men, both in Africa, in Kenya, where I have 20 people that work for my organization in Kenya. So naturally, there are so many people that look up to me. And then in Seattle as well, I actually mentor a number of youths, and I get paid for some of that work. So youths from the Kenyan, Eritrean communities, even the Mexican community. So listening to other Black men is important, but also just listening in general is very important. But I learned to be a father from my mother, and I was talking about that earlier. If you're joining us, and meeting Dakohai for the first time, I just want you to know that he's based in Boston, and he's an artist, he's a life coach, he's an entrepreneur and a spiritualist that is a big supporter of the daily African proverbs that we host on Clubhouse at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every day. We've just been talking about what lessons can people learn from African fathers. Similar to what Dakohai was saying, a lot of the time we don't check on African fathers. We don't check on them. We just assume that, oh, this is okay, he's strong, because that's how we are groomed and raised to be. But now that you're listening to the story of Dakohai, I just want you to think about a few things you'd say if you had a microphone that all Black fathers were able to listen to what you have to say. What would you tell Dakohai? What would you tell me? But Dakohai, I want to ask you that question. What advice would you give to all Black fathers worldwide? Imagine that they're all listening, they've stopped everything they're doing, and they're paying attention to you. What would you tell them about being a black father or an African father in the world today?
Okay. I would love to say one, it is okay for help, right? It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to get help. It is okay to seek out help, right? And proper help, not just any kind of help. Make sure it's the help that you're looking for. It's okay for you to be specific with the kind of help that you're looking for. Don't let anyone try to tell you the help that you need. You know the help that you need, right? So you get that help. That's the first advice I want to give. And second, fight. Do not stop fighting. Do not stop fighting. We make waves and we make moves. I'm somebody, like I tell people, I don't got friends. Everyone that's a friend of mine owns a business. Why? Because I make sure of it. We make moves, right? I cannot stress it enough that we have the capacity and the capabilities of changing our world every day, all the time, right? So fight. Don't stop fighting. And if you ever need help or ever need anything, you got a father in me. You can call me anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will let everyone who is on Clubhouse feel free to join us on stage. We are getting to the wrapping up moments of our conversation today. And Dakohai, I want to give you a chance to ask me any question that you feel that I haven't asked you yet. I know that you've been dying to interview me, so I just want to respond to any question you have.
Yeah. So my question is, one, Simon, when is your birthday?
December 29th, 1983.
Okay, my birthday is
Yeah.
December 13th.
December? December
Yeah,
what?
December 13th.
Ah, nice. You're a December
Yeah,
boy.
yeah. Word. I
Nice.
had to ask. I was like, wow, this man, what is going on here? Second question I have for you is,
You're so funny.
with your mom and your story, and even coming over here and continuing the work overseas, do you ever find yourself questioning a choice that you had to make? Like,
That's a good question. Like questioning the choices I've had to make in life until this moment.
yeah.
I question choices I make all the time, because I know that not all the decisions I make are perfect, but they are my decisions. So I have to take responsibility once I make the choice. Now I have to stand in it. I took that decision and I'm willing to die for it. That's where I stand. But by the time I get to making that decision, I've done a lot of homework, I've consulted, and then I reflect on prior experiences, so that I don't make a big mistake, something that is unrepairable.
Nice.
Yeah. So after I answer your last question, we are going to end the live on YouTube and come back to Clubhouse, and so that we can engage with everybody else. So
Okay, word.
ask your last question.
My last question for you, Simon, is what is the memory of your mother what allows you to continue to do the work? Because when I hear you talk about her, and I hear about Maraka, and I kind of see it now, it's
Yeah.
as if she never left. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I feel
Yeah.
that.
I think it's a very big part of why I continue with the work. And it's the main thing that reminds me that anything is possible. Anything is possible anytime, anywhere. So you just have to stay open. You have to be willing to take the risks and put in the work.
Yeah.
Because the work, the consistency, and the calculated risk taking is what is going to differentiate you from everybody else. Because many people can't sustain, putting in the work, staying consistent, calculatively, taking risks, and also knowing that life itself is very temporary. If you are not going to wake up tomorrow, what would you do today? If you knew you'll never wake up tomorrow, how would you operate today? So I function a lot like that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's all I have right now until we can ever have another session like this. But I wanted to ask because it's a big it's really interesting because like you don't even live like on the East Coast. You live on the West Coast. You're literally on the
Yeah,
whole other side now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you still continue the work. So I'm like, wow, that level of
yeah.
dedication and vigor and rigor and all that. I just wanted to know what was always fueling it, and yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, man. And then I have people that depend on me, I have people that depend on the effort I make, not just because I provide for them, but because they see it and they can start doing it on their own. So for me, I'm just doing my part and I feel good. By the time I go to sleep, I know that I did it well.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's all that matters. Sleep good.
Yeah, yeah, man. Thank you so much for making the time for us to have today's conversation. If you joined us on YouTube, thank you so much. This has been the African Father in America podcast. My name is Simon Okelo, and I have been talking to my friend, my brother, Dakohai Matityahu. So we'll go into Clubhouse and have an after party for the next 15 or so minutes. Thank you so much. Okay.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze.